AITA for choosing not to help my sister financially after she called me a failure. So I, 29M, have an older sister, Rachel, 33F, and we've always had a pretty complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the overachiever, the one who always got straight A's, was on every sports team, and just generally seemed to have her life together. I, on the other hand, didn't really care about those things as much. I wasn't bad at school, but I didn't go above and beyond. I focused more on my hobbies like playing video games and hanging out with my friends. It wasn't like I was doing terribly, but I never really went out of my way to be the perfect kid. We've had issues over the years where she's called me lazy or unambitious. I'm a software developer now, and I'm doing pretty well for myself. Decent job, nice apartment, living comfortably. But Rachel has always been the kind of person to look down on my career choice. She's a lawyer and often brings up how much more prestigious and financially rewarding her job is compared to mine. She's even said to me before that she wouldn't be proud if I were her sibling because I settled for a job that doesn't require a degree from an Ivy League school. So, yeah, there's always been a bit of tension there. A few weeks ago, Rachel reached out to me in a panic. She said she was in financial trouble and needed some help. Apparently, her law firm had a huge round of layoffs, and she got caught up in it. She's been looking for another job, but nothing has panned out yet, and she's running low on savings. She asked if I could lend her $15,000 to cover her expenses until she finds something new. Now, I've always been the type to try to help people when I can, especially family, so I initially thought about it. But then I took a step back. Here's the thing. Rachel has always had this superiority complex, and I've been on the receiving end of her judgment for as long as I can remember. She said things about how I'm not as successful as her, that my job isn't really important, and that I'm basically just getting by. I've worked hard to get where I am, and it stings that she doesn't seem to acknowledge that. Over the years, whenever I've tried to talk to her about something that's important to me or my own struggles, she brushes it off. So, when she asked for money, I honestly felt conflicted. After thinking about it for a while, I decided not to lend her the money. I told her that I couldn't afford to give her that much right now, and that I didn't think it was the best idea for me financially. She flipped out, saying I was being selfish, and that family is supposed to help each other. She then dropped a bomb on me that I wasn't prepared for. She said, "You know, it's no wonder you'll always be a failure if you can't even help your own sister when she's struggling. I guess this is just what happens when you settle for mediocrity." I'm not going to lie. That comment hurt. A lot. I didn't respond right away because I was too angry and hurt, but she kept texting me about how disappointed she was. She said I was just like our parents, stingy and unhelpful, and that she shouldn't have expected anything more from me. She also accused me of holding a grudge against her just because she's done better than me in life, and that I was being petty for not helping her out. Eventually, I told her that I didn't think she deserved my help after the way she's treated me over the years, and that her words were really hurtful. She called me childish and hung up on me. Since then, she hasn't reached out at all. I've been getting texts from our parents telling me that I should have just helped her, that family is more important than anything else, and that I'm making things worse by holding a grudge. They say I should have just sucked it up and helped her because she's family and she needs me. I've been getting the same thing from some other relatives, too, who say that I'm being too hard on her. I understand that I might be a little harsh, but at the same time, I just feel like my sister has never respected me, and she's only coming to me now because she needs something. I've helped her before with smaller amounts of money in the past, but this time felt different. I felt like I was enabling her to continue treating me like I don't matter unless she needs something from me. Plus, I've worked hard to get where I am, and I don't want to just hand over a huge amount of money to someone who's been consistently condescending towards me. Now, I'm questioning whether I did the right thing. A lot of people are telling me that I should have just helped her, even if she's been mean to me in the past, because that's what family does. But I feel like if I help her, I'd just be reinforcing the idea that it's okay to treat me poorly and still expect me to give her everything. AITA for not helping my sister financially after everything she's said to me over the years. Edit. Some people have been asking about the specifics of my job, so I just wanted to clarify. I'm a software developer, and while my work isn't as prestigious as being a lawyer, I make a comfortable living. I don't have the same degree of job security as someone like my sister, but I enjoy my work and I'm good at it. I've worked hard to build my career, and I'm proud of what I've achieved. That's why it stings when she constantly dismisses what I do as less important than her job. It feels like she values her career above all else, and I can't help but feel like she's looking down on me for not having the same type of career. Some of you have asked why I didn't offer a smaller amount or set up a repayment plan. Honestly, after everything she's said to me in the past, I just didn't feel like I could do that. I've tried to be there for her in the past, but it never feels like it's appreciated. At this point, I'm just tired of constantly being made to feel less than. I don't want to be the person who always gives and gets nothing in return, especially when the person I'm giving to has no respect for me. I appreciate all the feedback, even if it's not what I wanted to hear. It's helped me think about things from different perspectives. I'm still unsure about what I'll do going forward, but I think I need to prioritize my own mental health in this situation. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's birthday because of something she did a year ago. I, 28F, have been friends with Sarah, 29F, since we were in high school. We've been through everything together: breakups, career changes, family drama, you name it. I've always considered her my closest friend, and she has always been a huge part of my life. However, about a year ago, something happened that has seriously shaken our friendship, and I'm still not sure how to move forward. I feel conflicted, but I also feel like it's not my fault that this friendship has changed so dramatically. I just don't know if I'm wrong for feeling this way. To give some context, about a year ago, Sarah and I were both invited to a party by a mutual friend. This was a pretty big deal because the host was someone who is well connected in the social scene, and a lot of people from our circle were going to be there. At the time, I was going through a rough patch in my life: financial struggles, a breakup, a lot of stress at work, and I wasn't in the best place mentally. I told Sarah that I was probably not going to go to the party because I didn't feel up to socializing, but she encouraged me to come anyway, saying it would be good for me to get out and have fun. I trust Sarah, so I agreed to go with her. We arrived together, and honestly, at first, I was doing okay. I had a couple of drinks, chatted with some people, and was starting to feel a little better. That is, until about halfway through the night when Sarah got really drunk. It's important to mention that Sarah has a history of getting very sloppy when she drinks, and I've always been there to keep an eye on her. In the past, I've had to help her get home, take care of her when she's thrown up, and even deal with some awkward situations. But this time it went too far. At one point during the party, Sarah started acting out of control. She was making really inappropriate jokes and laughing loudly at things that weren't funny. She began flirting with some guy who had a girlfriend, and it was uncomfortable to watch. People started to notice, and Sarah just kept getting more and more obnoxious. Eventually, she pulled me aside to talk because she was too drunk to keep track of what was happening. I tried to steer her away from the situation and calm her down, but she just got upset and started yelling at me. She said I was being too controlling, that I needed to stop being such a buzzkill, and that I didn't know how to have fun anymore. It was embarrassing. By this point, I was mortified. I was already stressed, and now I had to babysit my best friend who was making a scene. I tried to take her home, but she refused, saying she didn't want to leave because the night was still young. I was getting frustrated, but I decided to leave the party early to make sure she was safe. I ended up calling an Uber, and as soon as we were in the car, Sarah started crying, saying I was the worst friend for taking her away from the party. She kept going on about how I was ruining her night and how I was so lame. She even told me that she didn't want me to come out with her anymore because I was such a drag. It was honestly a huge slap in the face, especially considering everything I had done to support her over the years. We got home, and I just left her in her room to sleep it off. The next day, she apologized, but it felt really shallow. She said she was sorry for how she acted, but she also said that I was being too uptight and that I needed to relax more. It didn't feel like a genuine apology to me. and I honestly started to question whether our friendship was still worth it. A few weeks later, she invited me out to a different event, and while I agreed to go, I noticed that things between us weren't the same. We still hung out, but there was always this underlying tension. We were both aware of what had happened, but we never really talked about it. It felt like the friendship had shifted in a way that I couldn't ignore, and I didn't feel comfortable being around her the same way I did before. Now, a year has passed, and it's Sarah's birthday again. She invited me to her party, but honestly, I just don't want to go. I'm still upset about what happened at that party, and I feel like our dynamic has changed for good. I've been trying to avoid her when she reaches out, and I've made it clear that I'm not as available as I once was. She's noticed, and it's been awkward, but I just feel like I need space. When I told her that I wasn't going to her birthday party, she was furious. She said I was being a terrible friend and that I was punishing her for something that happened a year ago. She accused me of overreacting and told me that she was over it and that I should be too. But I still feel hurt by the way she treated me, and I don't think I could just act like everything is fine. Now, she's saying that I'm being childish and that I'm cutting her out over something that's in the past. She even accused me of being the one who is dramatic and said that I need to let it go. She's reaching out to other people in our friend group, trying to get them to convince me to come, and it's making me feel more and more isolated. I don't want to deal with the drama, but I also don't want to lose her as a friend. I just don't know if I can go back to how things were before. So, AITA for refusing to go to Sarah's birthday after everything that happened last year? Am I being too harsh for not wanting to show up and pretend like I'm okay with how things have changed? AITA for telling my parents that I don't want to have a relationship with them anymore after what they did? So, this is a bit of a complicated situation, and I'm still kind of in shock that it's gotten to this point. I'm 27 years old, and I have always had a close relationship with my family. Growing up, my parents were always there for me in the traditional sense. They supported my schooling, helped me with jobs, and were just generally around whenever I needed them. But over the past few years, things have gone downhill, and I'm starting to wonder if I've made the right decision in cutting them out of my life. Let me give you some context. I've always been a people-pleaser type of person. I'm the kind of person who hates conflict and will often go out of my way to avoid making anyone upset. I'd rather just keep things calm and smooth over any disagreements to keep the peace. My parents, while they never outright asked me to do this, were the type of people who took advantage of my tendency to be overly accommodating. They'd always ask me to help with things, do favors, and let them take over parts of my life that I should have had control over. The first sign that something was wrong came when I was about 24. I had been dating my now ex-girlfriend for about a year, and things were going well. She was a great person, and I saw a future with her. My parents, however, seemed to have a problem with her from the beginning. They didn't like the way she dressed, her career path, or even the way she communicated. They were very passive-aggressive about it, and they'd make snide comments when I talk about her. I didn't want to confront them about it, because I was worried it would ruin the relationship, but I did start to notice that their attitude toward her was getting worse. One day, out of the blue, they asked me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my mom sat me down and straight up told me that they didn't think my girlfriend was good enough for me. She claimed that they didn't want to see me settle, and that I should keep my options open because there were better girls out there who could give me a better life. I was floored. I had never imagined that my parents would say something like that. It felt like a betrayal. My ex-girlfriend had always been nothing but kind and respectful to them, and they'd never really given her a chance. I tried to brush it off and defend her, but my parents were relentless. They continued to criticize her behind her back and even started to spread rumors to other family members about how they thought I was wasting my time with her. The more they spoke about it, the more I started to resent them. It was like they didn't care about my happiness, just about their own idea of what I should have in my life. Eventually, I broke up with my girlfriend because the pressure from my parents was too much, and I felt like I had to choose between them and her. In hindsight, it was a mistake, but I was so manipulated by their opinions that I just didn't see any other way out. A few years passed, and I had some time to reflect. I met someone else, someone who treated me like I'd never been treated before. She was kind, loving, and everything my ex-girlfriend had been, but better. The problem was, when I introduced her to my parents, they didn't seem impressed. My mom made a point to say she didn't look like my type and that she was too quiet. My dad, on the other hand, barely spoke to her and seemed distant. It was like they were determined to find a flaw, and when they couldn't, they just started acting cold and aloof. It was like I was dating a complete stranger to them, and they didn't even try to get to know her. It was hurtful, and I could see how much it was affecting my new relationship. This all came to a head when my partner and I were talking about moving in together. I was really excited about the idea, but when I brought it up to my parents, I basically said that they didn't think it was a good idea. They told me I was rushing things and that I was too young to be thinking about cohabitating with someone I wasn't married to. They also made a point to remind me that they didn't approve of my partner. It was at that moment that I realized I could never truly be happy while constantly seeking their approval. It felt like I would never be good enough for them, no matter who I was with, and that their opinion of my life would always come first. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I told them that I didn't want to have a relationship with them anymore. I told them that their constant criticism and interference in my life had ruined my trust in them, and I couldn't continue to let them control my decisions. I explained that while I would always love them, I needed to distance myself from my own well-being. My mom was devastated, and my dad was angry, calling me selfish and saying I'd regret it. They begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. It's been about 2 months now, and I've barely spoken to them. They tried reaching out, sending texts, leaving voicemails, but I haven't responded. Part of me feels guilty, but another part of me feels a weight has been lifted. I feel like I'm finally living for myself and not for their expectations. But the guilt is real. I know they love me, and they've given me a lot over the years, but I'm starting to feel like I'm done being their pawn. I guess I'm just wondering if I went too far, or if I'm justified in wanting to break free from their control. AITA for cutting my parents out of my life. AITA for confronting my sister after she constantly invites my ex to family gatherings. So, some background before I dive into the issue. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I have a younger sister, Sarah, who's 26. Sarah and I have always been pretty close, but lately we've had some tension, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here or if she is. Around 3 years ago, I was in a serious relationship with a guy named Dan. We were together for almost 5 years, and during that time, I thought we had a really solid connection. He was charming, funny, and seemed to get along with everyone in my family, including my sister Sarah. At first, everything was great, but over time, Dan and I started drifting apart. It was a mix of both personal issues and the fact that he was starting to become more distant. Long story short, we broke up after a really hard conversation where we both realized we wanted different things. The breakup was rough for me, and it took me a while to fully get over it. Now, here's where things get a little messy. Since our breakup, my sister Sarah has been a little too friendly with Dan. I'm not talking about just being cordial at family events. No. She started inviting him to hang out with her and her friends, sending him messages, and even going to concerts or events with him alone. This all started happening within a few months of our breakup. At first, I thought it was just her being friendly, but it kept going, and it felt like she was really getting close to him. To make things even more uncomfortable, my family often invites both of us to their gatherings, birthdays, holidays, etc. So, whenever I would show up to a family event, guess who would already be there? Dan. It wasn't a huge deal at first, but after a while, I started feeling really uncomfortable. Every time I would see him, I'd be reminded of the emotional pain I went through when we broke up. And the fact that my sister seemed so cozy with him didn't help. It was like I couldn't escape it. At some point, I decided to talk to Sarah about it. I pulled her aside and gently asked why she continued inviting Dan to family events. I told her that I was struggling to move on, and it felt really hurtful to see her so close to him after everything. She seemed to brush me off, saying that she was just being nice and that I shouldn't hold it against her. She insisted that Dan was a good guy, and it wasn't like she was trying to steal him from me or anything. I let it slide for a while, but as time went on, I started getting more upset. Every time we had a family gathering, it felt like the elephant in the room was the fact that my ex was there, and my sister seemed to have no problem with it. The worst part was that no one else in the family seemed to care. My parents thought it was fine, and whenever I brought it up, they told me to let it go and that I was overreacting. but I started to feel like it wasn't just about the family events anymore. It was like Sarah was rubbing it in my face. She'd make little comments about how great Dan was or how they had been hanging out, and it just felt like she was trying to show off their friendship. She even started showing up at family events wearing clothes that I knew Dan had bought for her, and it made me feel completely uncomfortable. It got to a point where I started avoiding family gatherings altogether because I didn't want to be in the same room as Dan and Sarah, who seemed to have developed this bond that I wasn't a part of anymore. Finally, after months of bottling it up, I snapped. A few weeks ago, we had a family barbecue, and sure enough, Dan was there, laughing with Sarah and everyone else like nothing had ever happened. I was already feeling on edge, and when I overheard Sarah talking about how much fun she and Dan had had at a concert they went to last weekend, I couldn't hold back anymore. I walked up to her in front of everyone and told her that I felt betrayed by the fact that she kept inviting my ex to family gatherings and acting like nothing had happened between us. I told her that it made me feel like I wasn't being supported by her, and that she should respect my feelings and not hang out with him so much. I also said that it hurt that she was acting like everything was normal when I was still trying to heal. Sarah got really defensive and told me I was being dramatic. She said I was acting like a child and that I needed to grow up. She insisted that she was allowed to be friends with Dan and that I was the one who needed to move on and stop acting like a victim. Our argument got pretty heated, and my parents ended up stepping in to break it up. But the damage was done. The rest of the barbecue was incredibly awkward, and now, I'm not sure if I've completely ruined my relationship with Sarah. Since then, Sarah has barely spoken to me, and when we do talk, it's tense and uncomfortable. My family's upset with me, too. They think I overreacted and that I shouldn't have caused a scene at the barbecue. They also think that I'm being selfish for not being happy that Sarah is making her own connections and maintaining her own friendships. They all seem to think that I need to let go of the past and just deal with the fact that Sarah and Dan are still in touch. I feel like I've been put in an impossible position. On the one hand, I feel like I'm allowed to have feelings and set boundaries, especially when it comes to my own emotional well-being. On the other hand, I don't want to come across as controlling or petty, especially when it's my sister and her right to hang out with whoever she wants. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister and asking her to stop inviting my ex to family events? Was I too harsh in expressing how I felt, or was my reaction justified given the circumstances? AITA for confronting my friend over using my personal struggles for her own benefit? I, 28F, have a friend, Sarah, 29F, who I've known for about 7 years. We met in college and hit it off immediately. We both had similar interests, loved talking about philosophy, music, and our shared passion for traveling. Over the years, we've gone on some incredible trips together, celebrated birthdays, and helped each other through tough times. We've always had this unspoken bond where we'd support each other, no questions asked. A few months ago, I found myself dealing with a pretty heavy personal situation. I've been struggling with anxiety and depression for a while, and it got particularly bad after I lost my job due to budget cuts at the company I work for. I've always been someone who thrives on routine, so losing that sense of structure really threw me off. My mental health took a serious hit, and I found myself withdrawing from a lot of things. It wasn't easy, but I've been seeing a therapist, trying to keep things in perspective, and relying on close friends for support. Sarah knew about everything. She was one of the first people I confided in when things started getting bad. I explained to her how difficult it was for me to even leave the house some days, how I was worried about finding a new job, and how I wasn't sure I could keep it all together. She was empathetic, told me she was there for me, and assured me that I could take my time to heal. So far, so good, right? Well, a few weeks ago, Sarah reached out to me asking if I could come with her to a networking event for women in business. The event was something she had been really excited about, and she was hoping to meet people who could help her career. She said that she'd love for me to come for moral support. Normally, I'd be happy to go, but I wasn't in a place where I felt comfortable being around a big group of people, especially people I didn't know. I told her that I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it, as I had been feeling down and needed to focus on taking care of myself. Sarah was understanding at first. She told me that she got it, that it was okay, and that she would let me know how the event went. Then, a few days later, I saw something on her Instagram story that threw me off. It was a post about the networking event, and in the caption, she wrote, "So grateful for my friend, my name, for coming out today and being such a huge support to me. Your strength and courage continue to inspire me every day." I was stunned. I immediately messaged her, asking if she was okay, and she told me that the post was just to give me credit for being there for her, even though I wasn't physically present. She said that she wanted to publicly acknowledge how much my friendship meant to her, and that it was a way of honoring my support, especially since I had been going through such a tough time. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with that, especially since I hadn't even attended the event. She insisted that I should just be happy that she was showing her gratitude. I felt incredibly uncomfortable. It wasn't just the fact that she posted about me being there when I wasn't. It was the way she was using my personal struggles to make herself look good. She wasn't acknowledging that I was in a bad place. Instead, she was framing the situation as if I had somehow been the one helping her when I was the one who needed help. She didn't ask for permission before posting, and it felt like she was using my vulnerability as a stepping stone to get praise. The whole situation left a sour taste in my mouth. I didn't feel like Sarah understood what I was going through. She was so focused on her own agenda that it felt like she was trying to use my personal struggles as a way to enhance her image. It was almost as if she didn't see me as an individual who was navigating a tough time, but rather as a prop for her to feel better about herself. A few days later, I decided to call her out on it. I explained how I felt about the post and how it bothered me that she used my struggles for her benefit. I told her that I understood she wanted to show gratitude, but that it wasn't right to frame me as someone who was there for her when I wasn't. I also pointed out that she had made no effort to check in on me during my struggles, aside from the initial conversation when I first opened up to her. Her response was defensive, claiming that she didn't mean any harm and that she had just been trying to express how much she valued our friendship. She said that I was being too sensitive and that I should be happy she was trying to show the world how much I meant to her. We had a long, tense conversation, and I ended up telling her that I needed space. I just couldn't deal with the idea that she was taking my personal struggles and using them as a way to boost her own image. It felt exploitative and inconsiderate. Since then, I've been thinking about whether I overreacted. I feel like I had every right to feel hurt, but I'm also wondering if I could have handled it better. Maybe I should have been more patient and given her a chance to explain herself without jumping to conclusions. But at the same time, I don't think I should have to excuse behavior like that, especially from someone who's supposed to be my friend. AITA for confronting her about this and asking for space, or should I have just let it go? TLDR, my friend posted on social media that I was there for her at an event when I wasn't, using my personal struggles to make herself look good. I confronted her about it, and she got defensive. I asked for space, but now I'm wondering if I overreacted. AITA for telling my friend that I'm not going to help them after they've been taking advantage of me for years. So, this all started about 8 years ago when I, 28M, met Lily, 27F, in college. We became good friends really quickly. She was funny, smart, and kind-hearted, and I genuinely enjoyed her company. We started hanging out a lot, and soon enough, she was someone I considered a close friend. She didn't have a huge social circle, so we got even closer. After college, Lily and I both ended up staying in the same city, and for the first few years, things were still good. However, as time went on, I started to notice some red flags in our friendship. It wasn't immediately obvious, but as our lives started to shift, I saw that I was doing a lot more for Lily than she was doing for me. To start with, Lily often asked for help with things, small things at first, like helping her move or picking her up from places. But then, it became more and more. She'd ask me to drive her to work when her car was in the shop, which seemed reasonable at first, but it turned into asking for rides multiple times a week. She'd ask me to cover for her when she forgot to do tasks, or even to take care of things for her, like helping her plan trips, write emails, or manage personal matters. It always seemed like she couldn't handle basic adult responsibilities without some sort of assistance. I never really minded helping her at first. We were friends, and I genuinely wanted to be there for her. But over the years, it started to feel less like a favor and more like an obligation. She'd make the same requests repeatedly, sometimes in the same week, and it started to wear on me. And when I started saying no, or even expressing frustration, it would be like I'd suddenly become the bad guy. She'd guilt-trip me, saying things like, "You're my best friend. I thought you would understand," or "I'd do it for you." It was hard to argue with that, and she'd make me feel bad for not being available. One of the most notable things that happened was when Lily asked me to help her financially. She'd run into some emergencies and needed money to cover rent, her car payment, or some medical bills. I loaned her money several times. At first, it was just small amounts, but over time, it escalated. The final loan I gave her was a couple of $1,000s because she had no one else to turn to, and it was an emergency. I asked her to pay me back in installments, but the repayment was always delayed. Whenever I would ask, she'd give me excuses. "I've been struggling to find work," or "My car broke down, and I need to fix it before I can pay you." The few times she did pay me back, it was always in small chunks, and I felt like it would never end. I started to feel like I was being taken advantage of, and it hurt. Not because I wasn't willing to help, but because I realized that no matter how much I did for her, she never seemed to be appreciative. She'd often take advantage of my good nature and never consider how it was affecting me. But when I needed help or support, she was rarely around. She wasn't the type to offer anything unless it was for her benefit. The tipping point for me came when I had my own emergency last year. My father was sick, and I had to take time off work to care for him. I was struggling to balance work, my personal life, and taking care of everything at home. I reached out to Lily for support, expecting her to at least offer help or check in on me. But instead, she just complained about her problems, and when I mentioned I was having a rough time, she immediately turned the conversation back to her. She didn't even ask how my dad was doing. I was hurt, and I realized that she'd never really been there for me in any meaningful way. I decided that I needed to take a step back from this friendship. It was clear that Lily didn't value me the way I valued her. It was a one-sided friendship where I was constantly giving, and she was constantly taking. I sat her down and told her that I couldn't keep doing this anymore. I explained how her behavior had been affecting me, how I had been feeling taken for granted, and that I needed space to focus on my own life. I told her that I wasn't going to lend her any more money or help her with things she could handle on her own. Lily got defensive and immediately accused me of abandoning her. She said that she had always been there for me, but when I pointed out specific times I had helped her without getting anything in return, she didn't have much to say. She then went on a rant about how I was being selfish and how she thought we were supposed to be friends through thick and thin. She said I was being unreasonable and that I was throwing away years of friendship for a few bad moments. To be honest, I was hurt by her response, but I also felt a sense of relief. I was finally standing up for myself after years of putting up with her behavior. I know I'm not perfect, but I also know that friendship should be a two-way street. It's not supposed to be about one person constantly taking advantage of the other. Now, I haven't heard from Lily in a few months. I think she's still upset, and I honestly don't know if she'll try to reach out again. Part of me wonders if I did the right thing, but another part of me feels like this was a long time coming. I'm just tired of being the one who always bends over backward to make everyone else's life easier while my own needs are ignored. So, AITA for deciding to cut off a friend who's been taking advantage of me for years, even though she's mad about it. AITA for telling my brother he's ruining his life by not leaving his toxic relationship. So here's the situation. I, 28F, have a brother, James, 30M, who's been in a relationship with his girlfriend, Mara, 28F, for about 3 years now. For the longest time, I thought something was off with them, but I chalked it up to maybe not fully understanding their relationship. Lately, though, things have escalated, and I'm at my wits' end trying to figure out if I'm in the wrong for getting involved. A bit of context, James is a great guy. He's always been a bit of a quiet soul, doesn't party much, and has always been kind of a homebody. He's a software engineer and works from home, so he has a relatively calm, steady life. Mara, on the other hand, well, she's a handful. To put it mildly, she's very controlling and manipulative. I've seen how she treats James, and it has honestly become hard to watch. A few months ago, things started to get worse. Mara started to come over to our family gatherings, and it didn't take long for us to notice the red flags. She would always belittle James, make snide comments about his job, his interests, even his friends. She'd roll her eyes at anything he said, and honestly, she'd just generally make him feel small. At first, I thought it was just me being overprotective, so I kept my mouth shut. But then, things started getting worse, and it wasn't just me who noticed. My parents, especially my mom, began pointing out how off their relationship seemed. At family dinners, Mara would talk over James, cut him off mid-sentence, and often make it seem like he couldn't make decisions for himself. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. At one point, I remember asking James if everything was okay, and he just shrugged it off. He kept saying that she was just a strong-willed person, and that's how she was. But the more I saw it, the more it was clear that something wasn't right. Then came the incident that really pushed me over the edge. James had invited us over to his place for dinner, and when I got there, I immediately noticed that he seemed off. His usually cheerful demeanor was gone, and he was just quiet, almost like he was walking on eggshells. Mara was sitting on the couch, and the second I walked in, she gave me this cold look. I greeted them, and we started chatting, but it was obvious that the atmosphere was tense. At one point, I asked James about a project he had been working on, and Mara immediately jumped in and said, "He's too busy to work on that right now. He's been slacking off at home for weeks." James didn't say anything, and I could tell he was getting uncomfortable, but I just let it slide. We continued with dinner, and the conversation seemed to get worse. Every time James tried to speak, Mara would interrupt him, talking over him and dismissing whatever he was saying. Then, the last straw came when Mara turned to James and told him that he couldn't hang out with our parents anymore because it was affecting their relationship. She literally told him that seeing us was making her feel unimportant and ignored, and if he wanted things to work out with her, he needed to stop seeing us so much. I was in complete shock. James just looked down at his plate and nodded, like he didn't even have a choice in the matter. I couldn't hold back anymore. I turned to James and said, "You need to get out of this relationship. She's controlling you. This isn't healthy." Mara immediately started screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names and telling me that I was jealous and trying to break them up. James just sat there, not saying a word. I looked at him, and I honestly didn't know what to say. I told him, "I don't know what you're doing, but you're ruining your life. You deserve better than this." After that, James and I haven't spoken much. I tried calling him a few times, but he either didn't pick up or would make excuses. My parents are starting to notice, too, and they're getting frustrated because they can't figure out what's going on. James isn't talking to anyone, and it's clear that Mara is behind this whole thing. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope here. On one hand, I don't want to be the overbearing sister who pushes her brother away. But on the other hand, I can't just sit back and watch him get emotionally manipulated by someone who clearly doesn't have his best interests at heart. I've talked to a few of my friends, and they all say the same thing. Mara is toxic, and James is letting her control his life. But am I wrong for getting involved so directly? I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle, and I'm starting to wonder if I've overstepped. So, AITA for confronting my brother about his relationship and telling him he's ruining his life? TLDR, my brother is in a toxic relationship with a manipulative girlfriend who belittles him and tries to isolate him from his family. I confronted him and told him he was ruining his life by staying with her. He hasn't spoken to me since. Am I in the wrong for getting involved? AITA for calling my friend a liar after they accused me of stealing? So a bit of background. I, 28M, have a friend, let's call him Mark, 29M, who I've known for over 10 years. We've been through a lot together, school, moving to different cities, and honestly, he's more like a brother than a friend. However, lately, we've been having issues, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable or if he's just straight up out of line. A few months ago, I moved to a new apartment. It's not the best place, but it's decent enough, and I've been working on improving it little by little. Mark came over a few times to hang out, and I've been pretty open about how much I've been spending on the place and my attempts to get some new furniture and appliances. One thing I've been really excited about is this secondhand gaming console I bought for cheap at a local shop. It's a rare model, one that's hard to find, and I spent a good chunk of money on it. To me, it felt like a great deal. I told Mark about it because he's into gaming too, and I knew he'd appreciate the find. Fast forward to a few weeks ago when Mark invited me over to his place. He was showing me his new setup and how he had redecorated his living room. When I walked in, I immediately noticed something strange. My secondhand console was sitting on his shelf. I was a bit shocked, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We had a few beers, talked for a while, and then I asked him casually, "Hey, where did you get that console from? It looks really familiar." He froze for a second, and then he gave me this weird smile. He said, "Oh, I found it at a secondhand store too. I thought it looked like something you would have." I stared at him for a while, and something fell off. I tried to brush it off at first, but then it hit me. I never told him where I bought the console, only that I had one. So how did it end up in his living room, looking exactly like mine? I asked him again, more directly this time. "Mark, are you sure you didn't take it from my place?" He immediately got defensive, raising his voice a bit. "What the hell are you accusing me of? I didn't steal anything from you. I bought this with my own money." I told him that I didn't believe him, because there was no way he would have bought the exact same console from a completely different store. The odds of that were astronomical, and I started to feel like he was lying to my face. We argued back and forth for a bit, but he stuck to his story. At one point, I said, "Mark, if you took it from me, just admit it. I won't be mad. I just want you to be honest." That seemed to make him even more upset. He snapped, "You're calling me a liar? You think I'd steal from you? After everything we've been through, you're a real piece of work." We didn't speak for the rest of the night, and I left his place feeling a mix of confusion and anger. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about it, and I was sure he had taken a console from my apartment without telling me. It didn't make sense otherwise. I had left it on my living room table, and I noticed it was gone the day after I visited him. No one else had been to my apartment except for him, so it had to have been him. I ended up confronting him again a week later. This time, I was more direct. I said, "Mark, I know you took the console. I want you to tell me the truth. I'm not trying to accuse you, but I'm sure you took it, and I just want some honesty here." His response was to double down on his story, even calling me paranoid. He kept saying that I was being ridiculous and that he had no idea what I was talking about. At that point, I completely lost my patience. I told him straight up, "You're lying, Mark. You took it from me, and now you're just trying to cover your tracks." He went silent for a few moments, then said, "You're unbelievable. I can't believe you're accusing me of something like this. We're done. I don't need friends like you." That was the last straw for me. I told him I couldn't be friends with someone who would lie and accuse me of things I didn't do. I also texted him later saying, "If you really want to salvage this friendship, just admit what you did. If not, then we're done." Since then, I've not heard a word from him. I've reached out a few times to try to talk, but he ignores my messages. Now, I'm feeling conflicted. Part of me still wants to believe that he wouldn't steal from me, that I'm just overreacting, but at the same time, the evidence is there. I really valued our friendship, and it hurts to think that someone I considered a brother could do something like this. I've talked to a few other friends about the situation, and some of them think I'm being too harsh and should just let it go. They say maybe it was a misunderstanding or that I'm reading too much into the situation. But others are saying I'm right to stand my ground and that he owes me an apology at the very least. So, AITA for calling my friend a liar and potentially ending our friendship over this? Should I have given him more of the benefit of the doubt? Or am I justified in being so angry and walking away? AITA for telling my sister I won't be around for her big move after everything she's done to me? So I, 29M, have a sister, Sarah, 32F, who I've always had a complicated relationship with. We grew up in the same house, but things were always a little different between us. She's the older sibling, but for some reason, I've always been the one to take care of things while she got to coast. I've always felt like I'm the second choice when it comes to support. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad to help out when I can. But as I've gotten older, it's become clear that this dynamic isn't just me being a good brother. It's because she's used to being the priority and expecting others to bend over backward for her. The most recent incident happened when Sarah decided to move across the country for a new job. It's a huge opportunity for her, and I'm genuinely happy she's doing something she loves. But the issue isn't the move, it's everything surrounding it. Sarah has asked for help with the move more times than I can count. She wanted me to help her pack up her entire apartment, which I did, without question, and then she asked if I could come with her to help unpack once she got her new place. The distance is a bit far, so it's not like I could easily pop over for a weekend. I have a full-time job, and honestly, I don't know how long I need to take off to help her settle in. But I still said yes, hoping I can make it work. Here's where things really started to get bad. She called me a few days ago, telling me she was going to fly out soon and that she needed me there for the first few days to help with everything. She insisted that I clear my schedule and commit to being there for an entire week. She even mentioned that she was doing me a favor by offering me the chance to visit her new city. I was taken aback. Not only was I being asked to give up a week of my life, but she was acting like I should be grateful. I gently reminded her that I've got responsibilities here and that I'd need more time to figure things out. What made things worse was how she responded. Sarah straight up told me that I was being selfish and unsupportive. She said that it was too bad. I couldn't make time for her because this move was a huge deal and she needed my help to get her life together. When I told her I need to rearrange some things to be there for her, she accused me of dragging my feet and being inflexible. To make matters worse, she started listing all the times she had helped me in the past. She brought up a time when I had car trouble years ago, which was a one-time thing, and how she had dropped everything to drive me to the mechanic. I'm grateful for that, but the way she threw in my face was just a lot. I was really hurt by her comments, especially because of the years of doing things for her and getting nothing in return. For example, when I had a difficult period in my life and I needed emotional support, she was never there for me. She couldn't be bothered to listen to what I was going through. And when I had to cancel on her for my own personal reasons, she didn't take it well at all, brushing me off with a whatever, I'll figure it out. I've also had several issues with how she treats me in general. She asks for help constantly, but rarely reciprocates. I don't want to get into everything, but I've had a few bad experiences where I've done favors for her, and she never even said thank you. One time, I helped her organize her closet and get rid of old stuff, and she didn't even acknowledge the time and effort I put in. She was more focused on how I didn't organize it exactly how she wanted it. This stuff builds up over time, and it's hard to ignore. After our conversation, I really started thinking about the situation, and I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be a part of her big move. I'm tired of being her emotional and logistical support system without any of that care or respect being reciprocated. I told her I wouldn't be able to come, and honestly, I felt a sense of relief. It was difficult to tell her, but I felt like it was the only way I could make her see that I deserve some consideration too. When I told Sarah, she went off on me. She said I was making it all about me, and that I was so selfish for not helping her when she needed me the most. She even said that it was fine if I didn't want to be a part of her life anymore, that I was probably too busy for family. She then mentioned that I might regret this later on in life, and that families should always be there for each other. I know she was upset, but I really felt like this was just another manipulation tactic. I've been feeling guilty, but at the same time, I think I've been more than reasonable in my decision. It's hard to prioritize someone who's never prioritized me. And it's not just about this one thing. It's the accumulation of years of her treating me like I'm always going to be there, no matter how little effort she puts into our relationship. I've been bending over backward for her for years, and I just feel like I'm done. Am I wrong for saying no this time? Should I have just sucked it up and gone to help, even though I feel like she's taking advantage of me? AITA for telling my sister I won't be around for her big move after everything she's done to me? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for calling out my friend for taking credit for something I did. For some context, I, 25M, have a close friend named Jordan, 26M. We met in college, and over the years, we've become pretty tight-knit. We share similar interests, including video games, music, and a passion for technology. We've always been able to rely on each other for support, and I considered him one of my best friends. About 3 months ago, I was working on a personal project, a gaming-related blog. I've been thinking about launching it for a while, but didn't have the time or motivation to get it off the ground until I decided to finally make a reality. The goal was to create a space where gamers could talk about industry news, reviews, and interesting tech developments. I already had experience writing articles during college and thought it would be a fun way to get back into it. I spent a lot of time researching and writing content for the blog. I even designed a website myself, using a platform I had experience with. I wanted it to be professional, but also personal, a reflection of the community I wanted to build. I've always been the kind of person who enjoys getting deep into the details of things, so I was really invested in the blog and wanted it to succeed. When I was about to launch it, I mentioned it to Jordan. I'd always told him about my passion for the gaming world and how much effort I'd put into the blog. I was really excited about it and asked him for his opinion on the design and content. Jordan, who's always been supportive, gave me some feedback, mostly positive, but with a couple of suggestions on how I could improve a few things, like some technical aspects of the website and how I could reword certain blog posts to be clearer. I took his suggestions into account, tweaked the blog accordingly, and then launched it. To my surprise, it started getting some traction quickly. A few weeks in, I was getting a decent amount of visitors, and I was starting to feel like I was doing something right. It was exciting, but also a little overwhelming, so I decided to ask Jordan if he could help me with the social media aspect, managing some posts and interacting with followers. He had a good following on his own social media accounts and knew how to engage people online. At first, everything went smoothly. He helped out with creating posts, sharing them on his accounts, and getting some attention for the blog. However, as the weeks went on, I noticed something strange. Jordan started taking more and more credit for the blog's success. It wasn't just in private conversations. He was saying things like, "We've been working hard on this blog, and it's finally paying off," or "I've been putting a lot of time to get this blog noticed." It didn't sit right with me. Yes, he had helped with the social media aspect, but he hadn't written a single article, designed the website, or done any of the other work that made the blog what it was. I didn't say anything at first because I thought maybe I was overreacting. But as time passed, it became more obvious. At one point, Jordan even started referring to himself as a co-founder of the blog in group chats and online. He would tell mutual friends that we were building something big together, and he kept acting as though he was as involved in the creative process as I was. I started feeling frustrated and a bit resentful. It felt like he was trying to take ownership of something that I had worked hard to create, and I was getting annoyed with the lack of recognition for all the effort I'd put into it. The tipping point came when we were talking to a group of friends at a bar. Jordan casually mentioned how we had launched a pretty successful project and that both of us are getting a lot of recognition for our hard work. A few of our friends even congratulated him on the success, and I could see he was soaking it all in, acting as though he was a key player in the entire thing. That's when I snapped. I pulled him aside and said, "Jordan, I don't think you're being fair here. I've been the one who has been putting all the work into the blog. I've written every article, designed the website, and managed most of the technical aspects. You've helped with the social media, but that's not the same as what I've done." Jordan looked at me like I had just slapped him. He tried to defend himself by saying, "I've been helping you with the social media, promoting it, and getting it attention. If it weren't for me, it wouldn't have gotten this far." I told him that I appreciated his help, but that it didn't give him the right to take credit for something I had created. I made it clear that he was not a co-founder, and that it felt wrong for him to act as though he had done as much work as I had. He got defensive and said, "Wow, I didn't realize you were going to be so possessive over something like this. I thought we were friends and working together." He also mentioned that he had been helping me out from the start, and it wasn't fair that I was now dismissing his contributions. He accused me of being ungrateful for his help and said I was trying to downplay what he had done. We ended up arguing for a while, and the whole situation felt really tense. Eventually, we dropped it, but things have been weird between us ever since. He hasn't really spoken to me much, and when he does, it's awkward. I've tried to reach out, but it seems like he's avoiding me. Some of our other friends have been commenting on the tension and asking if we're okay, which only makes things worse. Now, I'm wondering if I handled the situation poorly. Maybe I should have let it go, or maybe I overreacted. On the other hand, it feels unfair for him to take credit for something I built from the ground up. I understand that he helped with social media, but it just didn't feel right to me that he was claiming it as a joint effort when, to me, it was very much my own project. So, AITA for calling out my friend for taking credit for my work. AITA for not helping my brother after he stole my idea for his business. So this has been eating at me for a while now, and I'm genuinely wondering if I'm the asshole here, if I have a valid reason to be upset. A little background. I, 27F, have a brother, Mike, 29M, who has always been a bit of a dreamer. Growing up, he was always coming up with ideas for businesses, some of which were really far-fetched, and others that seemed more reasonable. He never really followed through with any of them, though. In fact, for the past few years, he's been working a regular job at a tech company. It's not a glamorous job, but it pays the bills. He's never been one to put in the extra effort to make something big happen, even though he has this constant stream of ideas. As for me, I've always been a bit more practical. After finishing college, I worked for a few years in a corporate job, but I felt like I was just going through the motions. About a year ago, I decided to leave my corporate job and go full-time into a business idea I had been working on. It's an online platform for freelance workers that connects them with clients who need short-term, high-skill work. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I've been working on it for months and have built up a decent client base. I've been pouring all my energy into it, and it's been growing steadily. Now, here's where things get tricky. A few months ago, Mike came to me with a new business idea. It sounded very similar to mine. In fact, it was almost identical. He said he wanted to start a platform that connects freelancers with clients, but he would focus on a specific niche, marketing freelancers. I told him that it sounded pretty close to what I was already doing, and I wasn't sure how well that would work. But Mike was insistent. He seemed excited, so I gave him some advice. I explained how I built my platform, what worked and what didn't. I didn't think much of it, since he had never followed through on any of his past ideas. Over the next few weeks, he asked me more questions and seemed more and more invested. I offered more insights, which he seemed to really appreciate. At the time, I thought, well, maybe he'll finally get serious about something. I was also feeling a little bit of pressure because my business wasn't growing as quickly as I'd hoped, so seeing him so motivated made me think that we could both succeed in this industry. However, things started to get weird when Mike began to ask for more and more detailed information. He asked for specifics about my business plan, my marketing strategy, how I handled client communications, and even about my pricing structure. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, thinking that maybe he was just trying to get things off the ground the right way. But then, something happened that really set me off. Mike announced that he was going to launch his platform. I was excited for him at first, but when I looked at his website, I couldn't help but notice that it was almost a carbon copy of mine. The branding was different, of course, and the focus on marketing freelancers was his unique twist, but everything else, the platform layout, the pricing model, the features, was nearly identical. It felt like he had taken my idea, my hard work, and just modified it slightly to fit his own version. I confronted him about it. I told him that it seemed like he had taken my business concept and just repurposed it for himself. He denied it at first, but eventually, he admitted that he had taken inspiration from my platform. He argued that it wasn't the same because he was focusing on a different niche, and I should be happy that he was doing something similar because it meant that he saw value in my idea. I told him that I felt betrayed. I had shared everything with him, my struggles, my strategies, and even my doubts, only for him to turn around and take what I had worked so hard on. He said I was being dramatic and that I should just be proud that he was getting things off the ground. He claimed that this wasn't personal, that business is business, and that I needed to toughen up. He even suggested that I should be flattered that he thought my idea was good enough to steal. I've been struggling with this for a while now. Part of me feels guilty for not being more supportive of his business, but another part of me is furious. I don't know if I'm being unreasonable. He's my brother, and I want to be happy for him, but I can't shake the feeling that he took advantage of my trust and used my hard work to jumpstart his own venture. I haven't talked to him much since the confrontation, and I'm feeling a little distant. Our relationship is tense now, and I don't know how to move forward. I haven't told any of our family members because I don't want to cause drama, but at the same time, I feel like I need to stand up for myself. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if I have a legitimate reason to be angry. So, AITA for not supporting my brother after he basically copied my business idea? Should I have been more understanding, or was I right to call him out? Also, would love advice on how to handle this situation moving forward, especially since we're family and I don't want to completely sever ties. AITA for not inviting my brother to my birthday party because of his constant bad behavior? I, 29F, recently had a big milestone birthday, and I made the decision not to invite my older brother, Adam, 32M, to the celebration. This has caused some serious family drama, and I'm starting to question if I did the right thing. Here's the situation. Adam and I have always had a difficult relationship. We're siblings, but we've never really gotten along. Growing up, I was always the good child, the one who followed the rules, kept my grades up, and tried to keep the peace. Adam, on the other hand, was the rebellious one. He was constantly in trouble, from getting suspended in school to getting into arguments with our parents and others. He has a way of speaking to people that's condescending, sarcastic, and often downright rude. When I was younger, I tried to maintain a relationship with him, but as I grew older, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, he would always make me feel like crap. The turning point for me came when I got engaged 5 years ago. I was planning my wedding, and I really wanted my brother to be there. I made sure to invite him, even though I had reservations about how he'd behave. I knew his history of causing drama, but I hoped he would put aside for me. Well, during the reception, he got drunk and started making passive-aggressive comments about how stupid weddings were and how much he hated forced celebrations. He even made a scene in front of my in-laws, which was mortifying. I ended up having to ask him to leave early, and he didn't even apologize. That was the last straw for me. Since then, we've had a strained relationship. I still try to make an effort, but every time I invited him to something or reached out to him, he would make me feel like I was doing something wrong by expecting him to behave like an adult. He often would say things like, "I'm not fake like you. I don't pretend to be happy when I'm not," which felt like a dig at me for trying to maintain peace or keep things cordial. Fast forward to this year. My birthday was coming up, and I wanted to do something special for myself. I planned a small dinner at a local restaurant with my closest friends and family, but I made the decision not to invite Adam. The thought of having him there, knowing how he can be, stressed me out. I didn't want him to ruin my celebration or make me feel uncomfortable on my special day. I figured with everything that had happened in the past, it was better to just leave him off the guest list. A few days before the party, my mom reached out to me. She said she had spoken to Adam, and he was really upset that I hadn't invited him. She told me I was being petty and that family is important. She also said that if I didn't invite him, it would cause a lot of tension in the family, and that I was being too sensitive about everything that had happened in the past. I explained that it wasn't about being sensitive. It was about not wanting to deal with his bad behavior again. My mom didn't seem to get it and tried to convince me that I should just forgive and forget. I still stuck to my guns and didn't invite Adam. When the day of my birthday arrived, everything went smoothly. My friends and the family who were there had a great time, and I felt relaxed for the first time in ages. But of course, Adam found out that I didn't invite him. He called me later that night, furious. He accused me of being childish and vindictive for not inviting him, and that I was holding on to old grudges instead of moving on. He even said that I was being ungrateful because he had done nothing but try to help me in the past. I didn't engage with him too much during the conversation, but it left me feeling angry and frustrated. It felt like he was trying to guilt-trip me into inviting him just so he could stir up more drama. He made everything about himself, as usual, and didn't seem to care at all about how his behavior had affected me over the years. Since that call, he's been ignoring me completely. He hasn't responded to any of my messages, and I haven't heard from him since that night. Now my extended family is involved. My mom, some of my aunts, and even my cousins are all upset with me for not inviting Adam. They say I'm being too hard on him and that he deserves a second chance. They also argue that it's not fair to isolate him, especially when he's family. I'm starting to second-guess myself. Did I make the wrong call? Should I have just sucked it up and invited him for the sake of family harmony? I feel like I'm constantly being told to tolerate bad behavior just because we're related, but I don't think that should be a requirement for having a healthy relationship. I've tried for years to make things work with Adam, but I can't keep letting his toxic attitude and behavior slide. So, AITA for not inviting my brother to my birthday party because of his constant bad behavior. AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after my sister said I had no choice but to help. So here's the situation. I, 28F, have a niece, Emma, who is 6 years old. My sister, Rachel, 31F, is a single mom and has a pretty demanding job as a nurse. Because of her schedule, she often needs help with Emma, especially on days when she has to work night shifts or long shifts. I totally get that, and I'm usually more than happy to help when I can. I'm not someone who likes to bail on family, and I've babysat for her multiple times in the past. The issue started a few weeks ago. Rachel came to me asking if I could babysit Emma for a few days because she had a big project at work that she couldn't get out of, and it was going to require a lot of overtime. She said she was already struggling with finding anyone else to help, and if I couldn't, she'd have to miss the project, which would affect her career. Now, to give you some context, I'm not exactly in a position to be constantly available to babysit. I have a pretty demanding job myself, and on top of that, I'm trying to juggle some personal project that I've been working on for a while. So I'm busy. I was planning on spending that particular week catching up on some of my own tasks, relaxing a little, and generally taking a break from all the chaos of life. So when Rachel asked me, I explained that while I understand the importance of her project and the difficulty of balancing work and parenting, I really couldn't do it that week. I told her I had a lot of personal commitments and really needed the time for myself. I also mentioned that I could help out on a couple of specific days if she needed it, but I couldn't commit to full-time babysitting for multiple days. Rachel wasn't thrilled with this response. She started going off about how she doesn't have anyone else to rely on, and how I'm the only family member who can help, and how it's really unfair for me to back out when it's family. She told me I should suck it up and help her out, even if it's inconvenient for me, because she has no other choice. I tried to explain that I wasn't refusing to help entirely. I just couldn't take on the responsibility of being her full-time babysitter. She responded by saying that I didn't understand what it was like to be a single parent and that I didn't have to worry about anyone else's schedule because I don't have kids of my own, and therefore, I should be more understanding. She said that this wasn't just a favor I could do for her, but something I was obligated to help with because that's what family does. At this point, I started to feel like I was being manipulated into guilt, so I told her that I wasn't going to do it. I told her that I would help if I could, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my own well-being and plans for her to work on her career. I also told her that she could try to reach out to some of her friends or maybe consider hiring a sitter for the week. Rachel immediately got upset, saying that I was being selfish and that she wasn't asking for much, just a little support. She then told me that if I loved her, I'd help, and that it was pretty telling that I wouldn't prioritize her and Emma. That really stung, and I felt like she was trying to guilt-trip me into doing something I didn't want to do. I tried to stay calm and told her I wasn't saying no forever, just that it wasn't a good time for me, and I needed to take care of my own needs too. But she kept insisting that I had no real reason to say no, and that this was just excuses on my part. She even said, I didn't have a choice but to have Emma, so I don't know why you think you get to choose whether or not to help. I was pretty shocked by that comment. A few days later, she sent me a long text saying how hurt she was by my response, how I'd let her down, and how I wasn't being a good sister. She asked if I even cared about her or Emma, because if I did, I would help. I responded saying that I do care about them both, but that I needed to set boundaries. I told her that helping out on occasion is one thing, but being expected to sacrifice my time, energy, and plans for an extended period wasn't something I was willing to do. I also pointed out that she had other options, even though they weren't ideal, and that it wasn't my responsibility to put my life on hold to make hers easier. After that, things got pretty cold between us. I've tried to reach out a couple of times to see if she's okay, but she hasn't responded or acknowledged my messages. I'm starting to wonder if I might have been too harsh in how I responded. Maybe I should have just sucked it up and helped her out. I feel like I've been a decent sister most of the time, but now I'm questioning if I'm being too selfish. So, AITA for refusing to babysit my niece when my sister said I had no choice but to help? I really want to be there for my family, but I'm just trying to find balance in my own life too. Was I wrong for putting my own needs first here? AITA for not supporting my best friend's decision to drop out of university to pursue her dream of being a full-time influencer. I, 26F, have been friends with my best friend, Sarah, 26F, for over 10 years. We met in high school and have been inseparable ever since. We both went to university together, although we didn't major in the same field. I went into business and she went into psychology, but we always helped each other with schoolwork and life in general. We supported each other through thick and thin, whether it was family issues, relationship drama, or career decisions. A couple of years ago, Sarah started gaining some attention on social media. She had a few viral posts, and before we knew it, she had a modest following. It started off with her sharing lifestyle and beauty tips, and over time, it grew into a full-fledged influencer career. At first, it seemed like a fun hobby for her, but over time, she started investing more time into it. She began working with brands, attending events, and collaborating with other influencers. The money started rolling in, and before long, Sarah was making more from her social media work than she ever could as a psychology major. Now, Sarah has decided that she wants to drop out of university completely and pursue her influencer career full-time. She's been talking about it for months, and recently, she made the final decision to quit school. She's already booked a flight to a big influencer event overseas and is planning to sign a contract with a major brand. She told me this decision is what will allow her to live her dream, and she's excited to leave behind the traditional path. I've been really torn about it, to be honest. I'm not against the idea of her pursuing her passions or her career, but I've had reservations about her dropping out of school. We both worked so hard to get into university, and we both had plans to graduate and build successful careers. I feel like Sarah is throwing away a solid education and a more stable future for something that's really unpredictable. There are a lot of influencers who burn out quickly or fall off after a few years. It's not exactly a guarantee, and I'm scared she might be setting herself up for failure if things don't work out. A few weeks ago, I sat her down and tried to express my concerns. I told her that while I fully support her passion and desire to make a career out of something she loves, I'm worried she's being a little too impulsive. I reminded her that she still has a year and a half left at university, and she could always finish her degree later if her influencer career doesn't pan out. I also pointed out that her psychology degree could open up a lot of opportunities if the social media thing doesn't last. I wasn't trying to discourage her, just trying to make sure she had a backup plan in case things didn't work out the way she expected. Sarah didn't take it well. She was really hurt that I didn't support her decision wholeheartedly. She accused me of being jealous and not believing in her dreams. She said that I was only focused on the conventional path and that I was trying to hold her back. She also said that I didn't understand what it's like to truly want something and that she was ready to take the risk. She told me she'd been thinking about this for a while and had already lined up all sorts of brand deals and opportunities, and that she was confident in her ability to make it work. She said she didn't need a degree for this. All she needed was the courage to pursue her dream, and I was being unsupportive by questioning her decision. I was devastated because I never intended to make her feel like I didn't believe in her. I just want what's best for her, and I'm genuinely worried she might be making a mistake. But now, she's barely speaking to me. She says that I don't get her, and that she doesn't need people in her life who don't believe in her dreams. She's even started spending more time with other friends who are more supportive of her decision. I feel like I'm losing my best friend over this. I tried to apologize and tell her that I was just concerned, but she said I was being condescending and that I should just respect her choice. It's been a week since that conversation, and I haven't heard from her much. I feel like I'm being punished for having a valid concern, and it hurts. I've always supported Sarah in everything, but now she's pushing me away, and it feels like she's choosing her social media career over our friendship. I get that I might not fully understand the world of being an influencer, but it just feels like she's being reckless. Am I wrong for not being fully on board with her decision? I want to support her, but I also don't want her to make a mistake she'll regret. Should I just drop it and let her do what she wants? Or is it okay for me to be concerned and try to convince her to finish school first? AITA for not supporting my best friend's decision to drop out of university to become a full-time influencer? AITA for confronting my brother about his behavior at family gatherings? I, 28F, have a brother, Mark, 32M, who has always been kind of troublemaker. He's the type of person who pushes boundaries, makes inappropriate jokes, and often gets away with things because he's charming and funny. I'm not saying he's a bad person. He can be really fun and likable when he's not being difficult. But over the years, his behavior has started to annoy me, and it's become a point of tension in our family. For some context, I live in a city about 3 hours away from where our parents live, so I don't get to see my family all that often. But when I do go home for holidays or family gatherings, it's always expected that we all come together, and I genuinely enjoy spending time with everyone. But over the past few years, Mark's behavior has really been affecting the dynamics. For one, he's been increasingly inappropriate with his jokes. I'm all for humor, and I get that some people like to push the envelope, but he takes it too far sometimes. There was one Thanksgiving where he made a joke about one of our cousins' recent weight gain, right in front of her. It wasn't even a clever joke, just mean-spirited. He didn't even seem to realize how uncomfortable everyone felt. And when our cousin left the table, he just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. My parents just laughed along with him, and I was so angry I barely managed to hold my tongue. But it didn't stop there. A few months ago, at a family barbecue, Mark made a really distasteful comment about a friend's new partner. Something about how the partner looked too good for them, and how they must have a really good personality to make up for it. Again, everyone laughed. It's like no one cares when he crosses the line. I was so furious, but didn't know how to address it without making things awkward. So, I kept quiet again. What really pushed me to my limit, though, was last Christmas. We were all sitting around the dinner table when Mark brought up a sensitive subject, our mom's health. She's been dealing with some chronic health issues for the last few years, and while it's not something we avoid talking about, we all try to be respectful. But Mark made this offhand comment about how it's probably time for her to just accept that she's getting older, and joked that she might be using her health as an excuse to get out of things she doesn't want to do. This was in front of our mom. My mom is a kind and loving woman, and while she does joke around sometimes, I could tell that her feelings were hurt. Mark just kept talking, oblivious to the fact that he'd crossed a line. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled him aside after dinner and asked him, "Why do you feel the need to be so mean all the time? Why can't you just be kind for once?" He looked at me, surprised, and said, "What? It's just jokes? You know I'm joking, right?" I replied, "It's not just jokes, Mark. You make people uncomfortable, and you're being really disrespectful, especially to Mom. You know how much she's struggling with her health, and you bring it up in the worst possible way." Mark got offensive. He said I was being too sensitive and that I should lighten up. He told me that I was the only one in the family who had an issue with his jokes, and that if I didn't like it, maybe I should just stop coming around. That stung, to be honest. I've always been close with my family, and it felt like he was dismissing my concerns completely. I told him that I wasn't trying to ruin the fun, but that there's a line between humor and cruelty, and he crosses it too often. We didn't really resolve anything, and things have been awkward since. I've had some private conversations with my parents about how I feel, but they're not exactly on my side either. They tell me that Mark is just being Mark, and that I need to accept it. They've basically brushed it off as him being the life of the party, and that he doesn't mean anything by it. But I feel like I'm the only one who sees how harmful it's becoming. And it's not just the jokes. His disregard for other people's feelings is really starting to get under my skin. I've been avoiding family gatherings lately because of how uncomfortable it makes me to be around him. I don't want to cause drama, but I also don't want to just ignore how I feel. Last week, we had a family dinner, and I barely spoke to Mark the entire time. My parents noticed and asked what was going on. I told them I just didn't want to be around the way Mark acts, and once again, they kind of dismissed my feelings. I could tell they were irritated with me, like I was making a bigger deal out of this than it really was. Now, I'm starting to wonder if I'm being unreasonable. I'm definitely not the only one who's uncomfortable when Mark acts like this, but it feels like everyone else just tolerates it. My parents don't seem to think it's that big of a deal, and my siblings are mostly just going along with whatever. So, AITA for confronting my brother about his behavior? Am I blowing this out of proportion, or is it time for me to put my foot down and let him know that his jokes aren't funny anymore? Any advice would be really helpful because I'm honestly at a loss. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she lied about me to our parents. So, a bit of background. I, 28M, have a younger sister, Lucy, 25F. We've always had a somewhat strained relationship growing up, but nothing that would warrant major issues. I've been very close with my parents and had a decent relationship with Lucy, at least I thought so. About a year ago, Lucy moved back home after a difficult breakup. She had been living with her ex for the past couple of years, but when they split, she didn't have anywhere else to go. My parents, being supportive, offered for her to stay at their house until she got back on her feet. I live about an hour away, so I would visit maybe once a month to catch up with everyone. During the time Lucy was staying at home, I tried to be as supportive as I could. I would check in on her, talk to her about her plans for getting back into the workforce, and help out when I could. However, as time went on, it became clear that Lucy wasn't exactly doing much to help herself. She would complain about her situation constantly, but never seemed to take any steps to improve it. She would stay up late watching TV or scrolling on her phone, and when she did apply for jobs, it was a half-hearted effort at best. My parents started getting frustrated, which I understood. They didn't mind helping her out, but they were also working full-time and didn't want to support her indefinitely. They tried to have talks with her, but Lucy would always get defensive, make excuses, or cry and say they didn't understand her feelings. Fast forward to a few months ago. I came over for a family dinner, and everything seemed fine at first. But after the meal, Lucy and I got into an argument. We were talking about her job search, or lack thereof, and I mentioned how I felt like she wasn't putting in the effort. I didn't say anything cruel, just that I thought she should try harder and take some responsibility. She got really upset, started crying, and stormed off to her room. Later that evening, my parents came to me, asking if I could try to be a little more understanding of Lucy's situation. They said she had been really struggling emotionally, and that my comments might have made things worse. I was a bit confused because I thought I was being supportive by encouraging her to do more, but I agreed to be more sensitive moving forward. Then about a week later, things started to get really strange. My mom called me to tell me that Lucy had been talking about me behind my back, saying I was mean and that I had been unnecessarily harsh towards her. She claimed that I had yelled at her and was pressuring her to get a job when I knew she was depressed and unable to handle it. Apparently, Lucy had also told my parents that I was sneaky and was talking behind her back to them about her. I was absolutely floored. First of all, I never yelled at her. Second, I had been encouraging her to do better, not attacking her. Third, I never said anything about her behind her back. I had been very direct with her about my concerns. I confronted Lucy about it, asking why she was lying to our parents. She denied it at first, but eventually admitted that she had exaggerated everything to make me look bad. She claimed she had to do it because I wasn't listening to her and didn't get how hard her life was. I told her that I was always there for her, but I also needed her to take responsibility for her own actions. She accused me of being too harsh and unsympathetic because I wasn't catering to her every emotional need. At this point, I'd had enough. I told her I wasn't going to be involved in her drama anymore, and that I wasn't going to pretend that her behavior was acceptable. I made it clear that I wasn't going to just sit back while she lied about me and manipulated our parents into feeling sorry for her. I also told her that if she couldn't have an honest conversation with me, I didn't see a reason to continue helping her or putting myself in the middle of her issues. Since then, things have been incredibly tense. My parents are still caught in the middle, unsure of who to believe, and Lucy has become more distant and passive-aggressive. I still visit my parents, but there's a palpable tension whenever Lucy is around. She's made it clear she's upset with me and refuses to have any kind of open conversation about what happened. Now, my parents are telling me I should try to be the bigger person and reach out to Lucy to mend things. They say I've been too harsh and that it's important to keep the family together. But honestly, I'm fed up. I feel like I've been supportive for years, and now she's just lying to everyone and causing drama because I held her accountable. I'm not going to let her walk all over me and expect me to fix everything when she won't even be honest. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister after she lied about me to our parents? Edit. Some people are suggesting that I should have been more understanding of her mental health. I get that mental health is important, But the issue here is that she's not even acknowledging her own behavior and is manipulating people to make me look bad. I've always supported her emotionally when she's gone through tough times, but I draw the line when she lies and tries to paint me as the villain. I don't think I've done anything wrong by refusing to engage with her unless she's willing to be honest and respectful. AITA for calling out my brother's girlfriend in front of our whole family for being rude to me. So I, 29F, have a brother, Adam, 27, and we're pretty close. We've had our moments growing up, but overall we get along well, and I've always been there for him. Recently, Adam started dating someone new, Sarah, 25, and I was happy for him at first. She seemed nice enough when we met a few months ago, but recently, things have gotten a bit tense, and I'm starting to wonder if I might have done something wrong here. The issue started at a family get-together last weekend. It was a typical Sunday lunch at our parents' house, where we all gather and catch up. Adam brought Sarah along, and I could tell right away that something felt a bit off. I'm not the type to immediately assume the worst, but I noticed Sarah acting kind of distant, like she was only half engaged with the conversation. I wasn't sure if it was just because she didn't know everyone very well, so I didn't think too much of it at first. As the afternoon went on, I was sitting at the dinner table with my parents, Adam, Sarah, and a couple of other relatives when Sarah started making passive-aggressive comments. She would say things like, "Wow, it's so cute that you all still hang out like this. I can't imagine spending my Sundays with family," and other remarks that just didn't sit right with me. I try to laugh it off and stay polite, but it was getting harder to ignore. The thing is, I've had my own struggles with relationships in the past, and I've learned the hard way that family is everything to me. It's not like we have perfect relationships, but we support each other. I've always been close with Adam, and I want him to be happy. But the way Sarah was acting made me feel like she was trying to put us down or make us feel bad for having a close-knit family. Eventually, Sarah made a comment that I couldn't ignore. We were talking about an upcoming trip my parents are planning to take, and I mentioned how excited I was to spend some time together with them. Sarah turned to me and said, "Well, I'm glad you're so attached to your family. Some of us don't need to be with our families all the time to feel complete." I'm not going to lie. I felt my blood start to boil. I don't know if it was the way she said it or if it was just the last straw, but I snapped. I turned to her and said, "Well, some of us don't need to be cold and distant to feel important either." The room went silent. My parents looked shocked, Adam looked uncomfortable, and Sarah just stared at me, her face turning red. At first, I thought maybe I'd gone too far. But then, Sarah stood up and said, "I don't need to take this from you," and left the table. She didn't even say goodbye when she left. Adam, of course, followed her, and the rest of us sat there in an awkward silence. Now, I'm feeling torn. I've always had a pretty short temper, but I usually keep it in check. I wasn't trying to cause a scene or hurt anyone's feelings, but I just couldn't stand her condescending attitude anymore. After they left, my mom pulled me aside and told me that I should have handled it more tactfully, that calling her out like that in front of everyone was unnecessary. She said that while Sarah's comments weren't great, I should have given her a chance to explain herself instead of attacking her. My dad didn't say much, but I could tell he was uncomfortable too. Adam hasn't said anything to me since, and it's been days now. I don't want to make things awkward with him, but I also don't want to let Sarah's behavior slide. I understand that Adam might be caught in the middle, but I don't think I was wrong to call her out. I've talked to a couple of friends about it, and they mostly agree with me. They said I was just standing up for myself and my family, but I'm still second-guessing myself. Was I too harsh? Should I have just let it go and not said anything? I'm honestly really frustrated because I want to have a good relationship with Adam's girlfriend, but I don't want to feel like I'm walking on eggshells around her either. AITA for calling out my brother's girlfriend in front of the whole family? Or should I have kept my mouth shut and let her comment slide? Edit. Okay, so there are a lot of responses, and I can see I probably wasn't as clear as I should have been in the original post. First of all, I'm not someone who flies off the handle easily, and I don't like to make things dramatic. But Sarah was saying some pretty pointed comments, and I felt like I had been patient enough. It wasn't just one or two comments. It was an ongoing attitude of superiority and condescension. I didn't just lash out because she was quiet or reserved. It was the way she made snide remarks about our family dynamics and try to make us feel bad about spending time together. As for my brother, I love him and want him to be happy. I'm not trying to break up his relationship, but I can't ignore the fact that Sarah's been acting disrespectfully toward me and my family. I'm open to talking it through, but it feels like Sarah's the one who needs to apologize, not me. To everyone who's saying I should have just stayed quiet, I get what you're saying, but I honestly didn't feel like I could take it anymore. I've always been close with my family, and I don't think I should have to hide that just to make Sarah feel comfortable. Lastly, to those asking why I didn't speak to Sarah privately, I honestly didn't think it would have done anything. She had already made multiple comments, and I felt like the only way to get through to her was to call her out. It wasn't meant to be a confrontation, but I wasn't going to let her keep making little digs. Thanks for all the input, though. It's definitely helping me think things through. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.